So this morning, we usually give some kind of a title to the talk. And this morning, Kozan was out to our house, and we started to have a conversation about some things that are of concern to her. And so rather than giving it a title, I'm titling it Kozan's Questions. So how do you like being put on the spot? How do you think I feel? I've got to set up here. So, why don't you go ahead and start here? And we can discuss, take other people's questions. This is stuff that everybody's going through some version of this. When you sit, please sit where you can see me so that I can see you.
There's also a bed.
He wants to be able to see you.
Yeah, I want to be able to see you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Should I go through the two scenarios this morning that we talked about?
How-
I don't know how to formulate a question.
Yeah, it's hard to formulate a question, so make it as short as you can, because otherwise you might as well come up here and talk. And I don't want you to do that. Not yet.
We talked about going unconscious.
Yes.
To be with what is. And an outside example was a friend of mine. I went to her house and to pick up Casey, and
Yes.
she saw
Your dog, Casey.
my dog Casey, and there was an animal cruelty commercial on trying
Yes.
to raise funds. And she said, I can't watch this stuff, and turned the channel.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, they're asking for help, and how often do we do that? You know, to go
Mhm.
unconscious because it's too painful.
Okay, let's talk about that. Have a question about that? That would work best.
We see others do it, it's obvious, but to some extent, if we recognize it in them, we're doing it ourselves, abandoning the situation.
Probably.
How can we become aware of when we're going unconscious and ignoring what's asking for
Okay. So the deeper level, first of all, that obviously we all know about that kind of distraction. Something we don't like, I'm out of here. I can't do that. I'm leaving it. So there are ways of staying with something without getting sucked into it, without getting sucked into the difficulty of the warfare, where you actually lose your awareness on a deeper level. It's very difficult. It's called the middle way. Not too tight, not too loose. If you back out of it, like she has done, not to criticize her, we don't know what kind of passion, aggression, and ignorance that make up her particular karma, her life. She may have really, really difficult situations that this just heightens her own awareness of her own suffering. So there's no right or wrong to this. The right and wrong is if you say something is right or something is wrong, this is what you look like. That's wrong. That's right. That shouldn't be there. Every time you make a judgment or determination about everything, not that it's not relatively correct, of course, it's correct, but it just keeps you locked down to just the simple aspect of tit for tat and cause and effect. It's much, much more profound, much, much deeper than that. So you, as a practitioner, as a meditator, need to, you can do whatever you want, but the way it looks over here is you need to train your mind to see, so that what gets stronger is not your ability to judge and condemn and accept or reject based on relative truth, but to be able to actually see more deeply into whatever is occurring, so you don't create further warfare. Very hard to do. It's very difficult to watch television, watch the news channel, which I highly encourage people to do. You should always stay in touch with your world, however it's manifesting itself. On the other hand, insofar as you can, just because it looks like somebody's wrong or it looks like somebody's right, give things the benefit of the doubt. Give them some time. And you could say, well, if we do that, the world's going to come to an end. Somebody's going to push the button and blow us up. Well, maybe so. And that's a possibility. There's always, it's risky being a human being. But I would say, insofar as we can, like for instance, let's just use the scenario that you gave there. She's shutting down on that because she doesn't want to see it because it's too painful for her, whatever may be her description. And then you need to look at yourself and see if you're shutting down on her. Because you need to see. When I say you need to, that's just a way of talking. You don't need to do anything. But seeing the deeper levels, seeing how that shutting down happens on so many different levels. We're not separate. Human beings are not separate from each other. They just look like it, and they will make war to increase that separation because it fuels what we call the seventh consciousness in the Yogacara tradition, or ego, the klesha mind, the mind that grasps at this and rejects that and thinks there is somebody that needs to be promoted or protected. So in your situation there, looking at that situation, try to see, since she's there, try to see the deeper level, help her, you could say magnetize her back into it a little bit, and say, and you could, one of the ways you can do that is not to pacify. That would be, it wouldn't be a good time to do that, because she's shut. It's hard to pacify something that's shutting down. You can pacify war, you can pacify passion, but pacifying ignorance is just putting more lids on the situation. You follow me?
What would be an example of pacifying ignorance?
Pacifying ignorance would be just try to do something with it, try to stop it from happening. Would be just be more ignorance. So there isn't any way you can do. You have to work with ignorance by either magnetizing it or enriching it, joining into it, working with it. So what you could do, just as an example, when I wasn't there, I don't know her, but you know her, just as an example, you could ask her how she's feeling. So how does that, wait a minute, how does that, what does that feel like to you? In other words, you can engage her and go, since you're friends with her, you already have like wires running from you to her, so you already have a link to her. But she wants to break her link with that. So your way, as you're a monk, so as your path as a bodhisattva is to help, is to save all beings, to help everybody where they're at. And that's very challenging, because that means you have to prioritize your awareness. You have to be aware first and think later. Thinking is great. It's a huge toolbox full of thinking tools. But the awareness part is it's without gloves, it's without any shield, it's without any protection. And ego or self-centeredness does not like that. We get threatened when we get in a situation where there's some kind of energy that's going awry that we can't control. More?
Then that brings to the next scenario.
Go ahead.
So maybe feeling how she felt in that situation when I was watching news show, a scene in Syria, Aleppo, where
Yes.
a woman, there was a man on the ground, obviously dead. They didn't show his face, but she was sitting on the ground next to him, rocking
like this.
and holding her heart and yelling, you know.
You couldn't hear her, though.
You couldn't, but you could see her mouth and you could see her face. And at one point, it's like, this woman, let this woman be. You've got a camera in her face. At the same time, it felt like we need to see that. And I wanted to turn it off, but I had to look. And it seems like the emotion was intense. You said that's ego.
It is.
You know?
It's not a judgment. I'm just saying it's grasping at itself.
So the question.
And there isn't one.
From
Yes, go ahead.
Just like she turned off the channel, if that feeling is coming up intense, and what can you do about it? Why keep watching that if it's solidifying the pattern of that feeling that you can't do anything?
It's still awareness. All you're doing is you're seeing the situation you're in now. You're seeing it so clearly that you may feel helpless. But quite often when we have this urge, or this intense urge to go and join a cause, it's more about us not wanting to feel bad, us wanting to ignore our suffering. Don't ignore suffering. Feel with the situation rather than try to fix it or mend it or patch it up. Compassion is not something you do, it's something you are. Go ahead.
So what if over and over you're seeing something and there's heartache, but maybe there's some irritation or aggression raising up? At what point do you have to say enough of that? I can't.
Your problem is what point? It's the assumption that there's a point. It's the imputation that at some point. Well, we have to deal with that. That's part of the structure of language and part of the structure of thinking and so on. Don't think in terms of points. Stay there, stay there. Don't abandon. When you say, as soon as you say at what point, you've actually ignored the whole thing you're talking about. Follow me?
Yeah, but I knew that's what I had to ask you.
Are you going to take credit for this?
No?
Be careful. Let's go. Keep going. Keep going. Come on.
So we were talking about the Million Woman March.
Yes.
And when Senshi mentioned it the other day, I felt like I want to go there.
Yeah.
Strongly. And then the more I thought about it, the more I didn't want to go, and now it's all over the place.
I noticed. Have you been thinking about this too? The Million Woman March?
Since my mom suggested it.
She suggested you go? Why didn't you say she should go?
She is going.
Oh, she is going. Okay. Well, good. Well, she can go for you then. And it's not about right and wrong. It's not about not going or going. It's about awareness. If you're living out of your awareness and not out of your opinions and thoughts and judgments, if you're living out of this right here all the time and not looking for points, and you're just here, you're just present, you're completely unprotected. It's a very raw feeling to be here. If you're living here, then if it's necessary for you to go to join this, you won't be able to help it. It'll be choiceless. If you're making choices, if you're going, should I or shouldn't I, then you don't have enough information in the form of what arises in awareness. If you're trying to make a decision and you're doing this to try to make your decision, you might as well move to the dark side of the moon. You're shutting everything down and trying to use your ideas about right, your ideas about wrong, your ideas about should I, shouldn't I. And what gets mixed in with that is all of the other things in one's ego, I'll call it substrate. You can call it past lives, you can call it anything, the background noise that comes out and that infests or informs this present moment with your past karma. Your karma is always ripening. It's always ripening. This is why sometimes we'll have days when we feel terrible for no reason. It's hard to do that, so we usually try to think of, it must be something I ate. It must be something, must be. More.
We observe this on TV across the world,
Yes.
on social media.
We
it's
sure do.
not in our backyard. Really, it is, but we haven't seen it. But we're going to see it.
We are.
It's going to be right next to us, and our neighbors, our community, our sangha.
What's the question?
How can we be with what is when action will be called for?
Stay in your backyard. Don't go into some kind of abstraction about what's happening in Aleppo. And at the same time, don't turn off the television when it's time to watch what's happening in Aleppo. Watch that woman. Be with, along with all the other people that are looking at that, or all the other people that are shutting it off. They can't look at it. They've not done anything wrong. It's just painful. And sometimes some people, especially without a mindfulness practice, without an awareness practice, without strengthening, whether you're a Buddhist or not, but without some way of strengthening that which sees, the seeing, the witnessing part of the discontinuous identity, you'll join forces with your opinions, your ideas, and you'll set up little barriers. So you might still feel things, but it won't be about you won't be resonating. The harmonics, you could say, of the situation will be off. You'll be all turned in. You won't be resonating with, just like when that drum struck this morning, you could hear this backboard rattle. So no one set that up. It's the exact temperature in the room. It's the first time I've heard that do that in a long time. The temperature, what's happening with the drum itself, the tension, all these things are dependently arisen. And the best way for you, when I say best, I'm just saying, responding to your question, stay here, be here, just be in your body, be in your sense fields. And this doesn't mean that you should shut down on the worrying or concern that's happening when you see the woman in Aleppo or the people at Dakota Access Pipeline, which is devastating to watch that. It's horrible. My suggestion to Unyo this morning as we were driving in, we were talking about that, is so they all have their uniforms, they all look like robots. Everybody should dress up like in exactly the same clown suit. You know, exactly, all in clown suits. I'm not saying that would work, but it might change the thinking of somebody. Maybe they would see the humor in the whole situation. Because at the same time, it's completely tragic. It's quite funny that there are people that are, you know, doing what they're doing. Of course, the end point could be difficult. So, if you're functioning out of awareness, then as far as going to what your mom is going to go to, out of her own ideas and opinions and hopes and fears, of all the people that are going, some people are actually going out of their thought patterns, their judgments, their fear, and their desire to be in control, and their desire to appease their own ego. In other words, they can't be a person. I'll do it here. I can't be a person who just stands by and watches that happen. That's ego. I mean, it's not bad. It's not evil, but it's a self-centeredness that gets perpetuated and causes. It's the other end of the warfare. You got to have warfare, and sometimes the warfare that's inside, which I've talked about before. If you've got warfare here that you haven't lost this interior war, then when you run into warfare out there, the chances you're going to go to war with something else. It's just a way of getting rid of your own warfare. Blame somebody else. Blame the Russians. Blame Donald Trump. Blame anybody. Go ahead.
So we have a situation where we, in my opinion, have someone quite dangerous in the White House going to be.
I know.
You know, and maybe I think it's helpful to work on this, being with the
Yes.
fundamental situation, but to not do anything at the same time.
Look at how your mind is working to not do anything. It's like what you're doing is you're doing your actual doing, actually being with and being aware of that is very, very powerful. And if out of awareness you feel moved to get up and go and join a march or join some kind of an organization that is anti-whomever.
I don't think it's anti-anything.
Okay, go ahead. What is it then? What is it if it's not anti?
Empowering.
Okay.
If there's solidarity of people that believe, see, understand the need for greater understanding.
Okay, then what would you suggest we do?
I don't know. Besides this. But if somebody's offering something like that and it can make a statement, what? No.
Yeah. You're what? You done? Yeah, what a letdown. Michael, make it easy now, Michael. Don't give me a real complicated dialectic.
What is the difference between concept and action?
It's too abstract.
What is the difference between that young lady not watching the things on the dogs and her wanting to do some action?
Same thing. More. Roll up your sleeves.
You use the word point.
She used the word point.
All right, it comes to a point.
She said, at what point? I think that's what you said. At what point? So, yeah, let's go into that.
Could we use the at what point is that the same as a reference point?
Could be.
Are all reference points just concepts?
Looks that way. But we don't have to get rid of reference point. I'm not saying you need to live in some kind of a mist where there's no handrail or no anything. Just it's important to be aware of the reference point. Just know that you have a reference point. We emphasize that this when we come in here and do these sutras and chant to quite often people in the West, people coming out of a different cultural situation. This is odd or weird or something, but we're just strengthening a particular kind of reference point.
So all this propaganda that's on Facebook or the news, it's just to see that it's propaganda?
You need to see what it is, and it may show up as propaganda. You may use that term, may arise around what has happened. You may label it. Be very careful of labels. If labels are about defining or helping us understand and describe something, then they seem to have some value. But if the label is about covering something up and do away with it, okay, well, I got that figured out. About labeling it that way. So there's a lot of nuance, you could say, there.
When you talk about labels that way, are you talking about the way they affect beliefs?
Well, anytime you believe anything, I mean, if you know it, that's different. If you know that's a floor, believing that's suspect. But if you know that's a floor, then okay, we'll go with that. But if you have a situation where you don't have some kind of solidity to it or some kind of position that is verifiable in some way through the sense fields, then you're talking about a belief that you because you like what's happening there, so you're going to believe that. We do this, we see it all the time. Don't believe, don't disbelieve. Don't accept, don't reject. Don't do anything with it at all. Live out, what I'm saying is, if you can, as much as you can, live out of your awareness so that you are meeting everything where it's at. If you're living out of your ideas, your opinions, your hopes, your fears, then you're shielded from everything by what you think is in front of you. It's called the imaginary nature, or parikalpita. So that's what you think is there, and it's not. It's dependently arisen, and it is without a self. But if you don't see it, then you constantly go back into some kind of separation about something's got to be done about this. The Buddha didn't say life was suffering sometimes. Being a human being is suffering, and it's not. It just means that we're in a position where we have a whole lot of nerve endings, a whole lot of. We're sensitive to everything, and we don't get our way. There's no way you can get your way. Yes, go ahead. One more question, then I'm going to move to one of these other 300 or 400 people.
So the Million Woman March,
Yes.
if you want to go to it because of belief, you need to look at that? Is that what you're saying?
I'm all about you going. I'm just saying be aware of your motivation. If you know that you're doing this because you believe that you need to do something. I'm not trying to change what you're doing. I'm just saying awareness of what is happening, awareness of the dynamic. I can't necessarily get rid of, say, jealousy. But if I'm looking at, well, who is it that's jealous? I have trouble finding someone. The jealousy is looking desperately for a self to cling to. And so therefore it tends to burn out fairly fast. But it's still there. And so I would say to anyone, if you want to go carry signs or whatever you want to do whatever you feel, but there's no right or wrong to it. Do whatever you need to do. I'm not going to interfere with anybody's, I'm not going to interfere with anyone without permission. These people who are monks, they've given me permission, so I could stop them from going. But I wouldn't, because why would I, what good is that to me? I have to meet people where they're at, and just like with Kozan, I would like to, my understanding, I can't take that and put it in a little box or a package and put it into you. It doesn't work. But I don't see, even though it's very painful to watch, I don't see a motivation, some kind of reason to go and actually move into that by joining a movement. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do that. Yes, Kevin.
Are the sense fields fundamentally pure? Is that one way to talk about them?
I don't know. What do you think, Bruce? What he said. Yeah.
Is meditation considered a sense as well? I know it's talked about sometimes, but I'm not clear.
Meditation is a
Meditation.
mentation.
Yeah.
The
Consciousness or the sense of thinking.
We're receiving thoughts.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of a meddling going on there with the thought patterns. But basically, you can't. If you could just think whatever you wanted, if you could just had control over your thoughts, you'd just be happy. You just think, I've had enough of this. I'm just gonna feel better. Doesn't seem to work that way. So this is why Dogen in the 13th century said to go out towards the world and try to do is delusion. It's delusion. But to when the world all comes to you, everything just comes to you. It is the part of generosity that's completely ignored. Receive. The best kind of receiving you can do is receive everything, all the negativity, all the positivity, all the questions, all the answers, all the disagreement, all the negative feelings. Receive. This is generosity. And the best kind of generosity that goes the other direction is give everyone your attention. When somebody's talking, listen to the tone of their voice, watch their body language. Don't add to it with your interpretations of the body language, but listen, be with them. It won't feel like you know anything if you're really with things. If you're with something, you're just with it. You won't have a feeling of, I think I'm making progress. Progress is a big lie. There's no progress to anything. Yes, sir.
When looking at the example of walking down the road and finding someone beating a dog,
Yes.
the instinctually, or perhaps because of beliefs, you want to stop
Okay.
beating having that person stop that person from beating the dog.
I got you. What's the question?
The question is, I feel that there's righteousness, there's goodness in stopping the beating of the dog, but is that goodness, even with lack of reciprocity, is that feeling of goodness attachment?
Of course. Of course. We're not trying to get rid of attachment. We're not trying to get rid of ego. All you have to do is be aware of it. If the awareness is king or queen, then if awareness is prior, in our tradition, consciousness only, perception only the perception. There's no perceiver. There's nothing to be perceived. It's just a perception. If you understand that intellectually, you're getting closer to the big breakthrough, which is like an axe in the middle of your forehead. Good luck. Nice forehead. It would look good separated. So what I'm saying is, not trying to be particularly cute here, but I'm saying if you can see what it is, then you can just function out of the awareness. There's no dog, there's no person, but there's something occurring that you are a part of, just because you need to do that. If we do it with a television, there's a lot more distance there. There still can be a lot of you could say accuracy in the response. You might see that and without asking me, without checking in with anybody, without even explaining to anybody, you might see you're packing your bags. I'm going there. I'm going to Aleppo and be a nurse. That's what I'm going to do. And if you're clear about it, no one's going to be able to dissuade you. And I wouldn't even try. If I saw that kind of intention about it, I'd say, I wouldn't meddle with that at all. And the situation with seeing someone beating a dog, which I've used before, you see someone in their yard with a stick or something, and you say, well, it's kind of choiceless. You have to do something about that. But you're right there. Someone is injuring an animal that's helpless, and you might have to go up and take the stick away from them. You might have to whack them one. There's no right and wrong to this. This is the confusion that gets is they think there's some kind of universal right and universal wrong. It's the bad boy of duality. You know, good and bad. Is that good or bad? How many times have you said that or you heard it said? Well, is that good or bad? Well, it's both, neither. It's Sandokai, the equality of sameness and difference. That's a conceptual sinkhole, because when you take your concepts into the equality of it's both this and that. It's the equality of things being the same and the equality of them being totally different from each other. Work on that. One of the ways to work on that is to study the concepts, which we do here every day, and then to go and shine, polish, extend, stretch the awareness, which feels like it's a completely useless thing to do. We said, especially if you've been here for 3 or 4 days, 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 years. On and on and on, stretching that. It's trying to see more and more deeply, because what happens on the cushion is not so important, because that's just an exercise you're doing. But when you go out into the world, the post-meditation we call it, you take that awareness with you, and that awareness starts to infuse, bleed into, infect, however you want, whatever word you want to use. It starts to come in between all of the conceptual models that we use to try to control our world and try to get happiness out of it. And at some point, there is some kind of giving up. There's no giver-upper, because if there is, that's more self-centeredness. But there's some kind of just collapse of the structure we call personal identity. And this is what starts to vibrate when we see someone beating someone else or hurting someone else, or we hear about it, or someone makes threats about what they're going to do to literally whole ethnic groups of people. This is very distasteful to all of us. And so when we look back to see what happened in Germany back in the 30s, we see there was a whole lot of people shutting down on it. I don't think we're exactly doing that today. It's hard to say what will happen. We need to stop.
Well, and 2 questions if
Go.
could. First from Sheldon.
Sheldon.
Is it possible to spend 24/7 watching people suffer from war and abuse when is doing something else, not ignoring?
Well, anytime you're looking at somebody on television or somebody in front of you, unless you've really trained your mind and you have your awareness is really primary, then you're not going to see the people. You're going to see what's there in a sense, but you also see your idea about it. We see our opinions about things, our ideas. We see our projection. We project the world. We don't see what is true, and what is true and not separate. Everywhere, every person you look at is their heart beating and your heart beating are not separate. They're separated, but not for long. But you have to realize that we can't operate out of opinions and ideas. We can, but if you're in this room, you're giving me permission to talk to you, and that's what I'm doing. So that's why awareness is so important. Stretch that awareness. Find a way. Maybe facing a wall, maybe some other way I don't even know about. But find some way to prioritize the witnessing or the seeing part of your life, so that you can see. So you can see first of all how crazy you are. The Buddha did not awaken to, as I sometimes say, unicorns and what's the other thing? Rainbows. He didn't see that. What he awoke to was intense suffering, his own and that of the world. And he also saw that he was not separate from anything. And this is how he attained realization. Yes?
From Brett McGinnis out in Philadelphia.
Brett.
He asks, if there is no progress, can you talk about what has changed, if anything, in you from when you were a young practitioner to now?
Nothing has changed.
How?
Was that? Were you disagreeing with me? Terry. So what has changed, to respond to the question in more, there's nothing has changed on one level, but what has changed on the other level is everything is still happening. There's still the emotion, there's still the fretting, there's still the worrying, there's still, as I mentioned, jealousy. Sometimes I have some jealousy come up. It doesn't last long, very short. but it snaps because the karma's here. I have these ears, I have this body, I have this particular biological complex functioning as a living being. And this is happening. But there's no solid being anymore. I'm not making a claim for myself. I'm just saying that when all of this energy, this would be maybe the difference that Brett is asking about. When all this energy looks for a self, it can't find one. So I used to be extremely sensitive to criticism. I used to be extremely sensitive to praise. If I got praised, I would puff up, and if I got criticized, I would defend myself. And now, I'm not that some of that wouldn't happen, but not like it used to. I'm no longer particularly worried about what people's opinions are in the way that I was, because I see that their opinions are based on not really being able to see clearly. Because if they see who this is, they'll see what I see, not separate. I'm only sitting in this chair because I understand something, not because I'm any better than anyone. But I understand something, and you give me permission to talk about it for an hour when I come in here. So there's something, what has changed is what Terry said. That's what's changed. Maybe a sense of humor has shown up somewhere. So now we need to go to the other.
We need to dedicate the merit.
Okay, we can do that. And people are welcome to stay for this next session. It's only half an hour long.
In the back of your chant books is the dedication of merit. Please remember our donation box out in the hallway, as well as donating online. And if you're buying stuff through Amazon this holiday season or whenever, please identify Sokukoji as the not-for-profit of choice, and we get money for nothing from Amazon.
$5.
Please do that.
May merit penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi hu shi son mu sa mo sa the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.